When two of the best athletes in the game team up, it's rare. Like once in a generation rare. But when it happens, it's legendary. You think of Brady and Moss lighting up the NFL in 2007, Shaq landing in LA to join Kobe in 96, Gretzky and Messier running through the 80s with the Oilers, stacking cups like it was a hobby. We could go on and on. Sports history is full of insane duos. But in basketball, this concept feels like the blueprint. It's the sport where two superstars joining forces can flip a franchise overnight. If they stay healthy, build chemistry, and actually like each other, boom! Championship dreams go from fantasy to reality. Not just for the front office, but for the entire fan base. Some of these duos lived up to the hype. Shaq and Kobe took over the early 2000s with a three-peat, Magic and Kareem owned the 80s, and of course, Jordan and Pippen, with 6 rings. Pure dominance. But not every duo is built to last. Some never reach their potential. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the Clippers, Kobe and Dwight Howard in LA. It's a roll of a dice, where health, chemistry, and sometimes just dumb luck decide everything. And that brings us to the moment that changed the NBA forever. July 4th, 2016. America's Independence Day. Or, if you're an OKC fan, the day the dream died. Kevin Durant, former MVP in the face of the Oklahoma City Thunder and future Hall of Famer, bounced. Not just anywhere, but to the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. Yeah, those Warriors. My Warriors. The same team that had just blown a 3-1 lead in the finals to LeBron's Cavs. KD teamed up with another MVP in his prime, Stephen Curry, and just like that, the trajectory of the NBA would change forever. The duo worked, and it wasn't just another great duo, but it was something we had never seen before, and something we may never see again, because there will never be another duo like Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant again. Before we dive into Kevin Durant's run with the Warriors and his partnership with Stephen Curry, let's take a step back and see how we even got here in the first place. KD entered the league in 2007, fresh off an insane freshman year at Texas where he averaged 25.8 points and 11.1 rebounds per game. That earned him every major college award under the sun, and by draft night, it was clear he was a future star. But the Portland Trail Blazers had other ideas. With the first overall pick, they took Greg Oden, one of the most infamous what-ifs and, unfortunately, busts in NBA history. Sorry, Greg. That left Durant to go second to the Seattle Supersonics, a decision that, in hindsight, probably still keeps Blazers fans up at night. KD wasted no time proving he was the real deal. He averaged 20.3 points per game as a rookie and ran away with the Rookie of the Year. And then boom, Seattle was gone. The team moved to Oklahoma City and rebranded as the Thunder, and in the same offseason, they drafted an explosive guard out of UCLA, Russell Westbrook. The season after that, they added James Harden with the 3rd overall pick in the 2009 draft, and just like that, OKC had a trio that was young, dangerous, and built to take over the league. By 2010, they were already a playoff team, and by 2011, they were in the Western Conference Finals, losing to Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavericks, who were on a storybook title run at the time. And by 2012, they had finally broken through, making the NBA Finals, where they ran into LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and the rest of the Miami Heat. 5 games later, the Heat were champions, and the Thunder were left wondering what went wrong. And, well, they were pretty young, so that's kind of why. Then came the mistake that changed everything. Harden was then traded to the Rockets over a contract dispute, and like that, OKC's three-headed monster was down to 2. Durant and Westbrook were still elite, still making deep playoff runs, but something was missing. Injuries, depth issues, and some brutal postseason collapses kept them from ever making it back to the finals. None hurt more than 2016. The Thunder were up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals against a Golden State Warriors team that had just won an NBA record 73 games in the regular season. One more win, and KD is back in the finals, facing LeBron again with a real shot at a ring. But then, collapse. The Warriors stormed back, winning 3 straight and ending OKC's season. And then, July 4th happened. Durant's free agency was the story of the summer, but no one really believed he'd leave. He was supposed to be the franchise player, the guy who would bring Oklahoma City its first championship. But there was also belief he could end up in a place like Boston or a place like Washington. And the Warriors did enter the conversation, but no one truly believed he would do that. But when the dust settled, he wasn't just leaving, he did end up joining the Warriors, the team that had just knocked them out of the playoffs. The 73-9 Warriors, who were led by two-time MVP Stephen Curry. The NBA world lost its mind. Which brings us to Curry. If Durant's rise to stardom was somewhat expected, Curry's was anything but. Besides the fact that his dad played in the NBA, coming out of Davidson, he was the undersized, sweet-shooting guard who scouts weren't sure could survive the NBA. Golden State took him 7th overall in 2009, and in his early years, injuries and an unstable roster kept the Warriors from being anything special. But once Curry found his groove, the game changed. By 2013, he was leading the Warriors to the playoffs, and by 2015, he was an MVP leading Golden State to a championship. By 2016, he had shattered every three-point record and won a second MVP, unanimously for the first time in league history, and then led the Warriors to a 73-win season. Then came the fateful finals collapse against LeBron's Cavs. A 3-1 lead, gone in a flash. The dream season was pretty much wasted, and with that, the Warriors were suddenly looking vulnerable. They knew they needed something to push them over the top. Enter Kevin Durant. The moment KD signed with the Warriors, the league was changed forever. A 73-win team adding a generational scorer in his prime, it sounded unfair. The reaction was immediate. Fans were furious, analysts were calling it a weak move, former players were saying Durant had just taken the easy way out, and he had just left his teammate and partner in crime, Russell Westbrook, in the dust to fight alone in Oklahoma City. All of that was just white noise though, because on the court, it was a basketball masterpiece. Kevin Durant would sign a 2-year, $54.3 million deal with the Warriors, which included a player option. This means the Warriors would have Kevin Durant through the 2016-17 season at least, pairing himself not only with Stephen Curry, but arguably the second best shooter of all time in Klay Thompson, and 2 All-Star defenders in Draymond Green, and 2015 Finals MVP Andre Iguodala. Durant's debut at the Warriors would come in the preseason versus the Raptors on October 1st, 2016. His regular season debut would come on October 25th, 2016 against the San Antonio Spurs. The Warriors struggled, losing to the Spurs 129-100. Steph and KD would each have pretty okay nights in their debut together. KD would score 27, while Steph scored 26, combining for 53% of the Warriors' total points. The duo looked promising, but the struggle with chemistry seemed to be a problem with the Warriors to start the year, attempting to balance the star power that they have. It wouldn't take long for the chemistry to form though, winning their second game versus the New Orleans Pelicans 122-114. Notably, in this game, Steph Curry would hit his 1600th career three-pointer, easily becoming the fastest to do so. Ironically, within the same week as each other, Steph would actually go 0 for 10 on three-point attempts in a loss versus the Lakers on November 4th, 2016. This would be the first game Steph had not made a three since November 11th, 2014, which is 157 straight games. In iconic fashion though, 3 days later on November 7th, 2016, Steph would score 46 points on 13 3-pointers made versus the New Orleans Pelicans, breaking the NBA record. 9 days later on November 26, 2016, versus the Timberwolves, KD would put up 28 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and a career-high 6 blocks, and the Warriors win 115-102. KD would become the first player in Warriors history to put up at least 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 blocks in a single game. It's such a cool stat, but it really is such an ESPN-esque stat. And suddenly at 45-8, the Warriors would match up with the Thunder in Oklahoma City, KD's first game back since his departure. The expectation was that KD would not be greeted positively by OKC fans, to put it lightly, and boy, those expectations were met. Fans arrived at Chesapeake Energy Arena and crowded almost every seat, displaying Kevin Durant cupcake hate propaganda in the form of posters, t-shirts, costumes, you name it. The people of OKC were not happy to see KD, calling his move soft, thus the cupcake, if you haven't caught on yet. And I assume KD was not too thrilled to see them either, and that included his old teammates. Kevin Durant would play, and he would boo every time he would touch the ball. The Warriors would come out on that scrappy night with a victory, winning 130-114. KD would score 34 points in his return to OKC, moving the team to a 46-8 record, a path to the playoffs clearly in sight. Unfortunately, in March, KD would suffer a grade 2 MCL sprain and tibial bone bruise, missing the Warriors' final 19 regular season games. But fortunately for the Warriors, it ended up being fine, ending the regular season 67-15, securing the number 1 seed in the West. In that process, the Warriors also broke 20 NBA records during the season shown here. The Warriors would meet the Portland Trail Blazers in round 1, sweeping them 4-0, even with Kevin Durant out games 2 and 3. In the semifinals, the Warriors would face off against the number 5 seed Utah Jazz. Similar to the Trail Blazers, the Jazz never really stood a chance, even with the Warriors all sick, getting swept 4-0. The Warriors one series away from their 3rd finals appearance in a row. In this Western Conference Finals, the Warriors would meet with the number 2 seeded San Antonio Spurs, who were only 6 games behind the Warriors, going 61-21. Initially, the Spurs were up by 25 at one point in Game 1, with Kawhi and the rest of the squad clicking. This was until Kawhi would get his ankle injured after landing on Zaza Pachulia in what would become quite a controversial play. A lot of blame being put on Zaza for the injury, and honestly, it's pretty fair. Kawhi would not return for the rest of the series. Due to this, the Warriors would rally back in Game 1, winning 113-111. And after 36 points from Steph in Game 4, the Warriors would sweep the Spurs, advancing to their 3rd straight NBA Finals. There was question of the Warriors' dominance, even after starting the playoffs with an all-time best 12-0 start, going to the finals undefeated. But due to the fact that the Spurs looked so dominant until Kawhi's injury, who knows what would have happened if he stayed healthy, but I guess we'll never know. In the Warriors' 3rd straight finals, they would once again, also for the 3rd straight time, meet LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, if you remember, beat the Warriors last season. This is also the first time 2 teams have met in 3 straight finals. I'm surprised the Lakers and Celtics haven't done this. The Warriors were out for revenge, thus the signing of Kevin Durant nearly a year prior, and the Cavs were out for blood too, the desire to go back-to-back with the same squad still lingering. But the Cavs never really stood a chance. The Warriors would win Game 1 convincingly, 113-91, mainly from a 38-point performance by KD, Steph adding 28 himself, taking a 1-0 series lead in the NBA Finals, winning their 13th straight playoff game. The Warriors would then again rail the Cavaliers, winning 132-113 to go up 2-0 in the series, winning record 14th straight playoff game. KD would lead the way with 33 points and 13 rebounds, and the Warriors together would hit an NBA Finals record 18 threes on 43 attempts. This was also the first game Steve Kerr would coach since April 19th, being out with an illness. Overall, the game was close at half, with the Warriors winning 67-64, and it was even close 86-82 during the 3rd, but the Warriors would go on a 35-17 run through the middle of the 4th, dismantling the Cavs. The Warriors would continue their record playoff winning streak to 15 games after beating the Cavs 118-113 in Game 3. KD would again lead the way in points with 31, Steph leading in rebounds with 13. Steph would also score 26 points of his own. The game would come down to the wire until KD would hit an iconic dagger with 45.3 seconds left, helping the Warriors take a 3-0 lead. Unlike the rest of the playoff games the Warriors played in though, they actually took an L in Game 4. The Cavs would win pretty convincingly 137-116 adding a win to the series down 3-1 in the finals for the second straight year. I was a bit traumatized after last year's 3-1 lead, but this one was a bit different. The Warriors would finish the job this time, beating the Cavs 129-120 in Game 5 to win the franchise's 5th finals. LeBron and the Cavs put up a valiant effort, but the Warriors were too overpowered. The team's 16-1 record through the 16-17 playoffs is the best winning percentage at .941 of all time. KD would again lead the team in points, scoring 39. Steph scored 34 himself, with the duo winning a championship together in their first year, KD winning Finals MVP after averaging 35.2 points per game, 8.2 rebounds per game, and 5.4 assists per game in 5 games. Steph would add 26.8 points per game, 9.4 assists per game, and 8 rebounds per game. This would end the 2017 NBA Finals, and thus the 2016-17 season. Unlike other superstar duos in the NBA's past, there was not much of a power struggle between the stars, Curry willingly adjusting his game to accommodate for Durant. Their styles truly complemented each other's, and Steph's off-ball movement paved the way for Kevin Durant's isolation scoring. The duo led the Warriors to a league-best offensive rating in the NBA at 115.6. The first season of this partnership was a tremendous success, winning effortlessly in year 1, dominating the playoffs with their 16-1 run, and the union of the two generational talents in basketball, blending their game seamlessly without the clash of their egos. The 2017 offseason would begin, and the expectation was that the Warriors would do it all over again in 2018 if it all goes to plan. Does it? The Warriors were great once again in 2017-2018, going 58-24 in the regular season, getting the number 2 seed in the West, behind Chris Paul and the James Harden-led Houston Rockets. This would actually be the first time they hadn't clinched the number 1 seed, or even won 60 games for that matter, since Steve Kerr took over as head coach. This said number 2 seed was mainly in part due to a chunk of injuries between all of the team's stars, including an MCL sprain that sidelined Stephen Curry for 6 weeks. The team would ultimately lose 10 of their last 17 games due to their screwed up chemistry and oddball rotations due to the injuries. They would, though, become the first team to have 4 All-Stars in consecutive seasons, happening in the 2016-17 season as well. Steph and KD would each average 26.4 points per game. How the hell did they average the same amount? Steph and KD would combine for about 52.8 points per game, and out of the Warriors' total 113.8 points per game, the two would combine for 46.4% of the team's total points. Holy shit. That's not even accounting for Klay Thompson's additional 20 points per game that season as well. I mean, they were cooking, holy shit. Despite the team's random injuries and growing hatred of the Warriors' constant dominance in the NBA zeitgeist, the team continued their success, having a league best offensive rating at 113.8. KD and Steph always seemed to be in united front, showing no signs of superstar tension. But the same couldn't really be said for KD and Draymond, but we'll get there. The 2018 playoffs were not as easy for the Warriors. Similar to Kevin Durant being out for the start of the last year's playoffs, it would be Steph's turn out of the duo to miss the start of this postseason. Compared to last year's team, the 2017-18 team would go 16-5 in this playoff compared to the 16-1 the year prior. The team would play the Spurs in round 1, winning the series in 5. The Steph Curry-less Warriors only gave up Game 4 103-90, but won every other game in the series quite convincingly. Mind you, this is a Kawhi-less Spurs team as well, still thanks to last year's team. KD would average 28.2 points per game, 8.6 rebounds per game, and 5.2 assists in the series' 5 games. It really does seem like the best version of KD was blossoming on the Warriors, and that says a lot. Not to say his Thunder counterpart was a noob by any means, but it seems when the playoffs would arrive, KD would lock in on the Warriors. I obviously loved this. A lot of others did not. They would go on to play the New Orleans Pelicans in the second round, and similar to round 1, they won the series 4-1. After a Game 1 victory, Steph Curry would finally return in Game 2, instantly having 28 points. The team would end up losing Game 3, 100-119, but they won the series quite convincingly. In his 4 games, Steph averaged 24.5 points per game versus the Pelicans, while KD would score 27.8 points per game. This would lead the Warriors to face off against the number 1 seeded Houston Rockets, who went 65-17. Now, The Rockets have been trying to catch up with the Warriors for some time now. Their shooting guard James Harden, currently in the middle of his prime, who is also the current MVP, I should note. The Rockets, who have fallen short the last few years, added NBA legend Chris Paul to pair with James Harden and the rest of the Rockets to beat the Warriors and win the West. And shit, they almost do. Outside of the end of the 2018-19 season, spoiler, we'll touch on shortly, the series was the hardest the Warriors had to go through, practically facing a team specifically designed to beat them. This venture would almost work out too, taking the Warriors to 7 games, but ultimately losing the series 4-3 in some pretty unfortunate circumstances. Houston would actually take a series lead, 3-2, after a Game 5 victory, but the Warriors would lock in / have a bit of luck too, don't get me wrong. In that same Game 5 victory, Chris Paul would injure his hamstring in the final minute, changing the trajectory of the entire series. The Rockets would collapse the rest of the series after losing CP3, even being up 3-2 after the Game 5 victory. Now, plain and simple, the Warriors would dominate Game 6 in Oakland, so they'd go to Houston for Game 7. In this Game 7, the Rockets would arguably have the biggest collapse in their franchise's history, missing an NBA playoff record 27 consecutive threes in that game, even being up double digits in the first half. But the Warriors would outscore the Rockets 33-15 in the third, ultimately winning Game 7 101-92, going to their 4th consecutive NBA Finals. And I do understand the Warriors got fucking lucky. If CP3 was healthy, the Rockets had a good chance of winning the series, but again, I guess we'll never know. Probably their biggest challenge to date. The Warriors, for the 4th consecutive time, would face off against LeBron and the Cavaliers, a worse version of the previous 3, I should note. LeBron really locked in the 2018 playoffs though, but it didn't really matter. The Warriors wouldn't lose a game, sweeping the Cavs. Now, the Cavs actually almost pulled off an upset in Game 1, but thanks to J.R. Smith's iconic blunder, Cavs would ultimately lose. In Game 2, Steph would actually gain a finals record, making 9 threes, ultimately ending with 33 points. Steph would struggle slightly in comparison to Game 2, but KD stepped up for him, scoring 43 points, 13 rebounds, and 7 assists, and even hitting another dagger 3-pointer similar to his game winner in the 2017 playoff. The Warriors would ultimately close out the series in Game 4 in dominant fashion, might I add, winning a 2nd straight championship 108-85. Steph and KD were both goated versus the Cavs in Game 7, Steph bouncing back from his Game 3 performance, scoring 37 on 7 threes. KD would finish with a triple-double himself, scoring 20 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. This would be the Warriors' 3rd final victory out of the last 4, solidifying themselves as a dynasty. KD would ultimately win his 2nd straight Finals MVP, quietly doing everything on each side of the ball, averaging 28.8 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, 7.5 assists per game on 52.6 field goal percentage. Though Steph wouldn't win Finals MVP, he was crucial to the team's overall offensive flow, going off in both Games 2 and 4. Curry and Durant finished their 2nd championship run together in total dominance, showing how unstoppable they can be fully engaged and healthy. I mean shit, look at these motherfuckers celebrate their 2nd straight title. They already knew it was in the bag. This was the first season that these Warriors really felt fatigue and injuries during their dynasty. Each of their 4 main stars dealt with some form of injury throughout the regular season, and Kerr also admitted the team dealt with some mental fatigue due to the success of the last few seasons, becoming especially disengaged against bad teams. There was also signs of tension between the players, specifically KD and Draymond, but this was really only a surface level at the moment. This will escalate more later, and again, we'll get there. Anyways, even with their tumultuous season compared to their last few, there was never any true doubt that the Warriors would run the table if the squad stayed healthy. Despite injuries, chemistry, and various groups of stars trying to coincide, the team felt inevitable. The duo would each have MVP caliber seasons, all while sharing the floor, sacrificing nothing in their efficiency. No duo in NBA history has maintained this kind of statistical symmetry, while each of them has still looked like a top 3 player in the entire league. No matter if one had an off night or was injured for that matter, the two of them combined to make the Warriors super successful. KD and Steph were a nightmare for defenses, and Curry's off-ball movement warped defenses to create space. With this space, KD's isolation skills would punish any rotation breakdown, and ultimately, they were goated for a 2nd straight year. No team ever felt more inevitable. This duo means the Warriors' success could be long-lasting. Only, it won't. Time for the 2018-19 season. Heading into the 2018-19 season, expectations were honestly at an all-time high during the Warriors' tenure with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry as a duo. This was hugely due to the addition of DeMarcus Cousins, a multiple-time All-Star, and All-NBA center. This would cause the Warriors to have 5 All-Stars from the season prior. This would be the first time a team would do so since the 1976 Celtics. I should note though, Boogie was not the same player he once was, hugely in part due to his injuries. If DeMarcus Cousins was healthy, good chance he never would have become the third Splash Brother.
Right, the third Splash Brother. We're still taking applications, don't worry.
Just kidding. It also would take a little while for his debut to come, being on January 18th, 2019. The Warriors as a unit were going into the season looking to become back-to-back-to-back champions, the first three-peat since the 2000-2002 Los Angeles Lakers. And ultimately the team went 57-25, ending as the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Despite the success though, disconnect within the Warriors locker room started to become more evident. On November 12th, 2018, things would begin to boil over in a 121-116 loss versus the Clippers in overtime. Draymond and KD had a now infamous blow-up on one another in the bench after Draymond refused to pass the ball to KD in the final seconds. This event would deepen the rift between KD and the Warriors organization that was already starting to form. KD would be a free agent at the end of the season, and his potential departure started to loom. And again, the Warriors were quite successful despite the tumultuous nature of their locker room. KD would average 26 points per game, 6.4 rebounds per game, 5.9 assists in 78 regular season games. Steph would average 27.3 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, and 5.2 assists per game in 69 regular season games. Both of them and Klay Thompson would make the All-Star team. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry each making the All-NBA teams. The team still broke plenty of records, even their third year in, and luckily for the Warriors, both Kevin Durant and Steph would avoid any major injury in the regular season, allowing each of them to build off their chemistry, leading to the team's success. Their combination redefined modern basketball strategies, emphasizing space, pace, versatility, and long-range/isolation scoring. Their success would cause teams around the league to desperately attempt to replicate their model. And the Warriors would enter into that 2019 playoffs as the number 1 seed, facing off against the number 8 Clippers. The Warriors would set the tone in Game 1, winning 121-104, Steph having a great performance, scoring 38 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. This is pretty unsurprising as Steph Curry is the Clippers' father. This series wouldn't be smooth sailing though, as some setbacks arised, including the torn left quadricep to DeMarcus Cousins in their Game 2 loss, sidelining Boogie for most of the playoffs. This also wasn't just any Game 2 loss, the team ultimately blowing a 31-point lead, the biggest comeback in NBA playoff history. Of course. What is it with my teams blowing the biggest playoff leads ever? Okay. KD would get questioned by the media, them questioning about his shooting tendencies, and KD responded, "I'm Kevin Durant. You know who I am," and then would go and take over the entire series. In Game 3, KD scored 38. In Game 4, he scored 33. The Warriors would end up losing Game 5, 121-129, despite KD scoring 45. But they would end up winning the series in Game 6, with KD scoring 50 in a display of basketball masterclass. KD would average 35 points per game during the series on 56% shooting. KD rocked. In round 2, the Warriors would rematch against the team they played in last year's Western Conference Finals in the number 4 seeded Houston Rockets. The Rockets had added some depth on top of last year's team, the idea that this could be their year, only it was not. The Warriors would win the series 4-2. The series would go back and forth through the first 2 games, the series tied 2-2. KD was still playing off the momentum from round 1. Steph was actually somewhat struggling in comparison at the start. And after the conclusion of Game 5, which ended in a Warriors victory, KD would leave in the third quarter after a right calf strain. This injury would define the rest of the playoffs. Curry and Klay, and of course the rest of the Warriors, would have to lock in to win without KD. In Game 6, Curry admittedly did not look good to start out, not scoring in the first half at all. This would change quickly, going off for 33 points in the second half, playing a huge role in the Warriors' Game 6 victory over the Rockets, 118-113, advancing to their 5th straight Western Conference Finals. I remember being stoked, and frankly I thought we were going to lose this series, but Steph, man, you animal. In this Western Conference Finals, the Warriors would face off against superstar Damian Lillard and Steph Curry's younger brother Seth, making them the first brothers to play each other in the series. Weird stat. And the rest of the number 3 seeded Portland Trailblazers. Unlike the other Western Conference playoffs, the Trailblazers didn't get a single game off the Warriors, getting swept 4-0. Steph would go off, averaging a staggering 36.5 points per game in the series. The Warriors looked good, but the question of when Durant would return still lingered. They'd be going back to their 5th straight finals, only the second team to achieve such a feat since the Celtics between 1957 and 1966. Instead of meeting the Cavs though, they'd be seeing a new champion from the East, the Toronto Raptors. This would be the first time the Steph Curry-led Warriors wouldn't play LeBron James and the Cavaliers. It would be 5 years in a row, which would have been pretty crazy. It probably would have happened too, but LeBron bailed on the bum-ass Cavs for, well, the bum-ass Lakers. In his place was the primary team that consistently stood in his way in the Eastern Conference playoffs, though they did not really do much against him usually. The Toronto Raptors. This was not like the other Raptors teams of past though. Gaining a player in the previous offseason the Warriors are all too familiar with, Kawhi Leonard. After his injury by Zaza, Kawhi and the Spurs' relationship would become rocky as he was going through the healing process, and the timeline of his return/overall rehab process weren't agreed upon. Ultimately, this would boil over, and the Spurs traded Kawhi to the Raptors for their franchise player DeMar DeRozan. Kawhi was only on a 1-year deal, and there was a good chance he'd leave after 1 year, so they'd have to take advantage, and boy, they did. In LeBron's first year out of the East, the Raptors would finally break through, appearing in their first finals. In these playoffs, Kawhi locked in. I want to talk more about Kawhi's year with the Raptors eventually, but that's for another time. Anyways, the Warriors would be entering this series without KD, though he was expected to return if the Warriors could last long enough. This was definitely a possibility too. Steph, Clay, and Dre still healthy, and they're no scrubs. They know the finals. This series was quite tumultuous, but KD was projected to return in Game 5, so the Warriors needed to just win 1 game before he'd come back. It'd be nice to win more than that though. Spoiler, they don't. They do end up winning the 1 though, good enough to go to Toronto down 3-1. With KD returning, a lot of people mean that the Warriors were about to warrior the Raptors, coming back down 3-1. Only they don't. Even though the Warriors walked out of the game with a W, making it 3-2, it would not come without a price. In his return, KD had an immediate impact in 12 minutes. KD would put up 11 points, 2 rebounds, and a block. Unfortunately, there's a reason KD only played 12 minutes. With about 9:50 left in the second quarter, he would bring the ball down, and on an in-between legs drive that he's done consistently over his entire career, he suddenly gives up the ball, limping off the court, paying no attention to the game any longer. This is Kevin Durant's last play as a Golden State Warrior. Kevin Durant would rupture his Achilles, ultimately ending his time in the series, and most likely the next season as well. This was honestly devastating, and I know it sounds greedy, but I wanted us to three-peat so bad. I was so emotionally invested, and injury or not, it was uncertain KD would appear as a Warrior the next time he would hit the court at the end of this season. So I wanted one more. After this, it didn't look good. After the Warriors' scrappy victory in Game 5, the series was now 3-2, going back home for Game 6. The comeback was still looking possible. Steph and Clay had to lock in Game 5, Steph scoring 31 and Clay 26, all points necessary for the W. They would go back to Oracle for Game 6, and long story short, it was a pretty shitty night. For me and the Warriors, I should note, not Canada. The Raptors would end up beating the Warriors in Game 6 by a score of 114-110. Steph would only score 21, but Klay Thompson was going off, putting up 30 points in 32 minutes. Only another devastating blow is dealt to the Warriors. On an attempted dunk with about 2:22 left in the third, Klay Thompson would land awkwardly, tearing his ACL. Now, I would love to talk more about Klay Thompson another time, but I'd still like to note, even if it's not his video, that he's still a complete badass to me for coming in and hitting both of those free throws after that injury. This game would end a lot of things for the Warriors. Their time at Oracle Arena, thus Oakland, the dominance of their 2000s team, this version of Klay Thompson, and the last game of the Steph KD era in the NBA. In the offseason, KD would decide to leave the Warriors, signing with the Brooklyn Nets, joining Kyrie Irving and DeAndre Jordan. Remember when they were trying to sell this as a big three? I mean, I guess it could make some sense, but this made me sad. And looking back at the time, it really makes me appreciate this era for the Warriors. Though the Warriors would reach the mountaintop again, they were truly never the same after this season. And though the 2018-19 season didn't end the way the Warriors wanted, it was still another display of the masterclass duo that was Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant. Similar to the last 2 seasons, Steph and KD were each amongst the top scorers in the NBA, their chemistry only getting better sharing the court, each having an offensive rating of over 120 when sharing it. They of course were a bit overwhelming for most teams. Their offensive styles complemented each other greatly, creating a dynamic of unpredictable offense. During the playoffs, the Warriors faced some pretty significant injuries. Despite these setbacks, both would deliver outstanding performances, demonstrating their resilience and overall brilliance. This would lead to their aforementioned 5th consecutive finals, only the 2nd team to do so in NBA history. Unfortunately, as you know, KD gets injured, ending any chance of him and Steph getting their 3rd ring together. This also would end their tenure together, not because of chemistry issues between them, but issues outside. KD would leave for the Nets, leaving the potential of him and Steph as a long-term duo forever on the table. Let's wrap this up. As much as I wanted it to happen, Kevin Durant was not going to be a Warrior forever. He found his success, and frankly, I think he wanted to go and prove he could do it without Steph and the Warriors. We're still waiting, KD. His time with the Warriors, though short, was remarkable and quite legendary, though the media hates giving him his flowers. His isolation scoring combined with Steph's off-ball movement created some of the most beautiful basketball ever played, and we took it for granted. Even me. Even as a Warriors fan, I can honestly understand the anger and hatred directed at our team in the late 2010s. It was quite an absurd roster, and we just kept winning. The thing that was overlooked was the product on the court. Despite their individual abilities on offense, 2 of the greatest scorers ever took a step back to allow their chemistry to blossom into a very successful 3 years. 3 finals appearances, 2 championships, and frankly, the most successful offense we'll probably ever see. This success makes it hard to forget that this may not have worked out at all. Plenty of teams I thought were easily the championship favorite have fallen short, and the Warriors could have easily become one of those teams, but they weren't. They lived up to expectation. Expectation that was championship or bust. Steph Curry and Kevin Durant together created a brand of basketball that practically was unbeatable. The 2018-19 campaign offered one last glimpse at near basketball perfection that we'll probably never see again. It makes me curious what the league would have been like if Draymond wasn't such a weenie sometimes. The Warriors and KD would probably still be on top, but alas, this was not the reality. Though Steph and the Warriors would miraculously win another ring a few seasons later, which KD hasn't been back to the finals or even a conference finals for that matter, even though he was a toe away, this duo remains a rare blueprint of collaborative greatness, one that will never be replicated. Not because the talent won't exist, because frankly it will, but because the chemistry, timing, and overall humility between 2 of the greatest basketball players of all time who ended up on the same team was lightning in a bottle. It can be argued if they're the greatest duo or not, but one thing can't be argued. We'll never see another duo like Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant again. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you so much for watching. Any support, whether that's liking, commenting, or subscribing, are greatly appreciated. I love making these videos, but they're hard work, so any support is genuinely gratifying. As always, I'm Drakey Berg. Have a good night.